Hello and welcome to another episode of the Winning with Shopify podcast. For anyone that's not tuned in before, my name is Nick and it's such a pleasure to have you tuning into our show. If you have been tuning in for a while, welcome back. And if you haven't already, you've got a little bit of homework to do here and it takes just 2 seconds. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, leave us a little review, leave us a comment, come check us out, subscribe to our YouTube channel and engage in as many ways as you possibly can/want to. We've also launched a community recently, which you've probably heard me talking about the last few weeks. If you're new to the show or you've been hearing me talk about it and haven't done anything yet, woe is you. You are missing out. We've just let our second, third, and fourth groups of people into the community, and some of the chat is absolutely incredible. People are talking about what CRM systems they're using, and we're also about to organize our first few little roundtable sessions where people can come and talk about a specific topic. For example, Shopify Plus, Google Ads, email marketing, or a whole range of other things. In today's show, though, which we're about to start in a second, once I hand over to myself and my guest, pre-recorded with a chap called Brian from Seguno, which is an email marketing platform, and he'll tell you much more about that when we get into the show in a moment. Brian does talk, though, about how to 2x and in some cases, well, 3x your email return rate. And what that doesn't mean people bouncing emails back. It means the amount of money you make in return for sending those emails. We also spoke about segmentation, probably missing millions within your database as well by not targeting people properly or getting stuck behind spam filters and other things without even realizing. I had no idea how simple it was if you focus on the right things to actually make email work harder for you. I certainly learned a lot in today's show, and there are some changes as well that you guys absolutely need to make, especially when you're sending to Gmail and Microsoft accounts, which is pretty much every email. Gmail is obviously part of Google, and Google offer most of the servers in the world at the moment on email. So we spoke about all of that, and the final thing on my list that we spoke about as well, which is really interesting as well, is about send rate throttling. Certainly when it's from a new domain or a bigger database, or you're doing something a little bit different, a little bit new. So you can throttle your send rates, how you do that, why you do that, and what that will do to spam filters as well. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's show, and thanks again for tuning in. So Brian, welcome back to the show. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm doing great. It's awesome to be back. It was a lot of fun last time we did this, so I saw it pop back on the calendar and couldn't wait. Excited to be
Amazing.
here.
Well, yeah, it's great. I mean, it's great to have you here. And obviously, we had Chris on as well, your boss, previously, back last summer, and we talked to Chris a lot. But for everyone's benefit as well, Brian's not the CEO. I'll let him introduce himself and say Chris is, but we couldn't get Chris on today, partly because of calendars, but then also when we started looking at the content of what we're talking about, it's much more in your sphere as well, Brian. Which obviously we can talk about Shopify automation and how that's changing in the email space. But before we do that, Brian, if no one's ever heard of, and I am wearing the t-shirt, Seguno, if no one's ever heard of Seguno, and they've never come across your name previously or heard your episode last summer or heard the time we had Seguno on last summer as well. Tell us a bit about Seguno and a little bit about your role in the team.
Yeah, so my name is Brian Krug. I'm the Director of Customer Success here at Seguno, so work with our merchants. Seguno is a retention marketing suite built exclusively for Shopify. We're actually the 2024 Shopify Build Award winner, which is a really exciting thing for us. Shopify celebrating, kind of recognizing how we've built the app to enhance your Shopify experience. And so that's been kind of the guiding principle for Seguno. Rather than take all of your data, all of your work, all of your designs and pipe them out of Shopify to a dozen different platforms, we think merchants are most effective closest to Shopify. So when you get in, you'll see a very different experience. Rather than go off into your product reviews are right on your product page in your admin. You can enhance your descriptions that way. Or when you're building segments to understand your audience, which I'm sure is something we'll get into quite a bit later on, you don't have to worry about, is that data over there? All of your order data is actually inside Shopify, and all of your customer preferences demonstrated on how they're browsing. Shopify is collecting all that, and you can just leverage it seamlessly for Seguno. So definitely, check us out. If you're tired of having to click into a dozen different platforms and worry about your integrations, that's really where we shine, trying to make people as efficient as possible. So.
Amazing. And if anyone can find the episode as well, I'll send you a Mars bar or something. I did actually wear this T-shirt under a jumper on a previous episode with one of the Seguno's competitors. So if you can find that episode, come let me know. But I didn't realize you guys had actually won the award for the build. I know from talking with Chris over the last sort of year or so since we last had you guys on, it was a bit less than a year. But since talking to Chris, you guys have always been so adamant, exactly as you've just said, actually, about keeping people within Shopify. So as a merchant, you've not got all these different systems to log into. I mean, even just running this podcast, I can think of probably 10, maybe 15 different systems we use for helping make our reels. Where we're recording right now, Brian, a different platform we use to organize this, another platform that's got all the show notes, something else does transcripts. Like, it's never ending. So I think keeping it all in one place makes a huge amount of sense. And yeah, we will come on and talk about segmentation as well, as you say. But I guess one of the biggest questions I want to kick off with, and hopefully there aren't too many of you listening who this question is relevant to, but just in case, I'm going to ask anyway. When we talk about Shopify email automation, we're not talking, hopefully, and we both said before we hit record, we're a bit skeptical about AI still. Using it for something, but a bit skeptical about the overall thing. This isn't AI like emailing your customers going, Dave, how was the football game at the weekend? Here are some cool products. We're not talking about that kind of automation, are we? So tell us a little bit about the automation that we are going to talk about today in terms of email workflows and how that should work within a Shopify store.
Yeah, absolutely. I think AI is obviously the buzzword, and I think it's largely misunderstood. A lot of people want to use AI as that forward thinking robot that takes care of your house chores for you and writes all your copy. And there are things that AI, in my opinion, are good at right now, and that they're not good at. You know, I will tell you, and I'm sure you think this as writing copy all the time. AI is not good at writing copy right now. They don't, things are not genuine. They don't accurately describe your brand experience. They don't accurately describe your products. I was actually playing with an AI for a pretty big platform recently, and they've got the keyword prompt and they'll write a description for you. And I put in the prompt, this product is bad for the environment. And the AI thing that kicked out, this is just a challenge, was show off your sustainability by highlighting your environmentally conscious t-shirt product here. And it's just a complete opposite. And your customers know that. I think, if you were to just try to offload the most important part of what makes your brand unique, you're kind of missing the point. What AI is good at is looking at data and helping to identify trends. And I think right now we're kind of getting into that part of AI. But as far as for automations and Shopify automations right now, that's not really what we're talking about in terms of automating those processes and workflows. What we're looking at with automations is sending the most relevant content to the right audience at the right time. And so an automation is really one-to-one marketing. So Nick, you go to my site, you click on a particular landing page. Maybe let's connect the whole experience. You come from an ad, you land on the landing page, you subscribe on that landing page, and automation sends the content most relevant to you to your inbox. So that customer journey from above the funnel into the sales funnel all the way through is kind of cohesive, and it's right when you're most interested. So we try to split email marketing into your campaigns or your newsletters, what your big bulk sends are, and then what your automations are. Automations drive usually at least 2 to 3x the conversion rate of the promotions. Now, the promotions are good for generating big spikes. They're great for when you want to tell all of your customers about something specific. But automations tell customers what they asked to be told about at the right time. So we're talking about your welcome automation. Congratulations on being a new purchaser. Thank you for being a repeat purchaser and loyal purchaser. Hey, haven't seen you in a while. Let's win you back. All of those things run automatically in the background based on the content and then the triggers that you set up there. The big ones are going to be your welcome, your abandoned checkout, abandoned browse, post-purchase automations. We can go on and on about all the amazing things you can do with that.
Yeah. And let's unpack those a little bit, I think,
Yeah.
because as you say, I mean, I hadn't actually heard that statistic from you guys yet, but the 2 times to 3 times, I mean, you guys in the US call it X. I love that, just 3X, 2X. But having a much better response rate. And the first thing that sprung to mind, and this is a comparison we draw all the time, is like if you compare the internet to a physical shop, if I went into a shop and left my email address, phone number, or address, a way of being contacted with the shopkeeper, and I'd been in that shop looking at buying, I don't know, a ladder to like clean my windows or get to the roof of my house for some reason. Like, I'm looking at ladders. He's not going to send me an email saying like, hey, Nick, we've got all these amazing drills. Or if he does, it's completely off piste. Whereas when you think about it, e-commerce stores do that. Like, if you don't have automation or something to connect this customer's interested in these things when they subscribed in that first journey, then actually you're missing the whole point. Because say you got 80% of your products are t-shirts and 10 or 20% of your products are shoes, and they just looked at your shoes and nothing else. And I guess one brand we have here in the UK, and I assume you guys have in the US, is Timberland. and they're well known for their shoes, their boots. But actually, I like buying clothing from them. I think their clothing's amazing. I do have a few pairs of shoes as well, but their clothing is amazing. So if I go on their website and shop for clothing or add something to my cart while I'm logged in, sometimes the emails I get do say, check out this £150 shoe. And it's like, I was looking at a £20 t-shirt. Like, and that disconnect immediately just makes me go, I'm on a list, aren't I? I'm just a number on a list. And it's not that, as you say, that personalization.
Yeah. Well, I think that is highlights this challenge for a lot of folks right now, is that they have a very monolithic view of their audience. And so when you don't consider where someone is in their buying experience, and you don't consider their preferences, you're going to send them content that's not relevant for them, and that, beyond just not getting a conversion, it actually sends a negative signal to the inbox provider, which then can damage your sending reputation. And when you do that in a big problem, that's causing bigger problems with Google, with Microsoft lately. But the people focus on kind of the hyper personalization, and they want to say, "Hey, Nick," but what they're missing is that you're looking for this T-shirt. One of my favorite examples I talk about with my team is I went to a store using Shopify. I've made one purchase in my lifetime. It's a long sleeve T-shirt. It's a men's T-shirt. I love it. Great shirt. The first email I got was the must-have dress for spring, and I'm
Wow.
like, I suppose it would look good. It would look interesting. But inside Shopify, people, I think, are missing that you already can look at preferences based on the segments. So you can see, did you view a product with a particular tag? So did I view a men's product, a product tagged with men's? Or have I purchased a product that is a men's product? Or you can collect that data straight from your forms. So if you think about all of the content you're trying to send to, rather than just one, in the classic term is, I need to blast everyone.
Yeah.
Rather than just blasting everyone, think about,
Carpet
is
bomb
the
is one of my
content,
clients.
yeah,
Carpet bombing.
is the content relevant for this audience, is the big thing. And when you start to think about that a little bit more, that's when you see your conversion rate, your engagement rates go really high, and that's actually going to improve your email deliverability. You're going to hit more inboxes. That's where the puzzle starts to unlock. In one case, I have a brand that I love working with. They do collectibles, and they've done this, to the absolute most. They have 27 different segments that they send to, but they're really, nuanced. They know that. Generally, just think about, is this product relevant for everyone? Is a men's shirt relevant for everyone? Is a women's dress relevant for everybody? If not, can I make a really easy split of those
Yeah.
contacts? So
Yeah.
yeah, that's the big key with the personalization, and getting that right content to the right person.
Yeah, yeah, and you make such a good point as well. Like the data's already in there, so why are
Yeah.
you not using it? And I think, if I'm brutally honest, I think we use it a lot in the marketing world that I'm in. Of like, we're trying to acquire traffic and new customers, and that's often the focus, or lapsed customers. We sometimes work a bit on that, but we're trying to get these new customers in, and we quite often look at like a Google Ads campaign and say, like, okay, this range is selling well, that's not. Split it, more budget, less budget. Simple equation, right? Until we fix it, and then more budget on both. That's the dream, because they're both making a better, 5, 10x ROI or whatever. But I think you make a really good point actually of saying that you've got the data of what people bought. We did actually do a project with a client a while ago where we had it really split on Google Ads, where it was like Google Ads will either tell you like if they're male, female, or unknown. And they haven't added a fourth box yet, just to be clear. But there's male, female, and unknown. And so we had a client that said to us, "Can we just run a generic unisex campaign to the unknown, men to male, men's campaign to the male audience, and female campaign to the women's audience, like nice and simple, female products." And we sort of said, like, "Yeah, we can do that." But we kind of went away and had a quick think about it. We came back to the client a bit later that day and said, actually, we're not sure that's the right approach, and we're going to check it. We're going to check it first. And the client was a bit like, just launch the thing, like it makes sense. And we actually checked the data, and we realized over 50% of the menswear was bought by women, and it was actually women obviously shopping for their other half. So we did a customer feedback survey. We were wrong again. And it was actually women buying products for themselves, because all the menswear was also listed as unisex, and the women's was just listed as women's, because the women's had a different fit, whereas the menswear you could wear if you're a woman. So a medium for a man would still be the same kind of number size to a woman. So that's why the men's fell under unisex. So we ended up actually launching a whole unisex range, which was just a complete carbon copy of the men's range. The product page was still just one product page, but there were just two different ways of getting there, one through unisex, one through men's. But that split actually of going, do you know what? Let's let Google Performance Max campaigns decide what gender product to show based on what it knows about them. So if it knows that it is a woman who regularly buys men's wear, either for herself or for her partner or somebody else, well, then actually let's let her see both of them unless she's searched for like you say, a dress in a more traditionally women's product, and I'll say that to be as PC as possible on the podcast, but yeah, it's a more of a traditionally women's product, or she's used the phrase women's or ladies or men's in that search, but otherwise we'll just try and show a bit of a mix. And I think it is interesting of like we've got to be careful not to judge the customers too much. So I say judge as in like try and put them into segmentations before they're ready to. So I guess my question really is with the segmentation, especially when you're setting up some sort of automation, whether it's abandoned basket or newsletter subscription or trying to win back campaigns, whatever that automation is, do you have to sit there and actually kind of connect up like 50,000 different potential journeys yourself, or is there a way you can actually automate the automation? If that sounds like automation
Yeah.
inception, but
No, I think so. And there you called out something really good about when you're doing a performance marketing, you don't have you're reaching out to somebody that hasn't been on your site or that you haven't connected what they're actually doing. And so when I think of ideal segmentation, it's a combination of what they've told me they're interested in. So I'm collecting that on a form, and then what they're actually doing. So that's why I want to connect the different data points, including what they told me in their preference, what they're actually looked at, and what they've actually purchased in the past, and then kind of connect those things. Depending on the automation, I think you want to keep it simple. If you're managing 50,000 things, you don't know which ones are actually efficient. You ran a good experiment. You ran 3 variants of the campaign. You figured out that unisex is working the best. Okay, I'm just going to do that. Typically, I would think of something like if I'm doing an abandoned checkout, the primary content is already segmented to the person because it's the product that they left in their checkout. They already told you the perfect product to send them. So just send them that. And then what you're going to try to split on might be cart value, or it might be on the total number of orders, the recency, frequency, and monetary value, or RFM metrics for that customer. And so we might do a conditional split within the abandoned checkout or with the abandoned browse to make sure that, hey, this is a high value customer. I want to keep them coming back. I'm really, I'm cranking into that CAC to LTV ratio is like hitting 5 for them. I'm really getting really good there. Whereas if it's somebody that hasn't made the first purchase, right now they're pure cost. Okay, how am I going to get that into at least break even for the first one? So there's some different pieces that you want to think through, but you really don't want to do too many conditionals. And honestly, I see this error a lot in testing, where people test so many nuanced things and they don't really have the volume, they don't really have the traffic to get statistically accurate results. So what they're looking for is basically the first confirmation bias that they get. Oh, this one's winning. Cool. Let's flip that on. They don't
move
even know
on.
that it's there. And so what I try to preach is a little bit of patience. When you're testing something, think about testing the discount type. Do people like free shipping? Let's run free shipping for a long period of time. Let's run free shipping for a full month. Then let's say, okay, can I actually increase average order value by using a buy X, get Y with a minimum purchase amount? All these things that already exist inside Shopify, you don't have to build an elaborate system for it. Just change the discount code. Look at kind of the sales over the month, try to adjust for your promotions, the other things that you're doing there. And then you'll make a more informed decision as you kind of go through there.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. And
so,
I think with the conditions, you make such a good point, especially when people start setting, like as you say, too many conditions. I guess every condition, I always think, whether it's and my brain works with spreadsheets, so I'm thinking Excel formulas, but it's the same format within a platform, isn't it? To set a condition of like if someone has bought this or they bought this product, every if statement. I always challenge brands, certainly with email, but every if statement, you got to remember there's 2 sides to the if statement. So if they did this, there's a yes and there's a no. And I think when you said too many conditions, my first thought was, yeah, we've had clients that have like 200,000 email addresses, but the average email audience is like 500 people. And we're like, it feels small. Like you're getting a good ROI, like a good, average order value and a good conversion rate, but it's on such a small scale, it doesn't really matter. It's not actually changed anything. And if it's 500 people at a time, you've got to send thousands of emails to reach your entire audience of 300,000 or something. By which point, how unengaged are they? They haven't heard from you for a long time. So I think, yeah, you make a really good point about those conditions. And I'd always think like, whenever I'm doing an if you've bought 3 women's products, well, there's most of your audience have not bought 3 women's products is probably the reality. So you got to think, what else am I doing to target those guys so we don't end up with this big set of our data just not being heard from? Because after a while, every single test or condition or segmentation we try and email, they've not heard from us for ages and they're just going to unsubscribe or ignore it. And as you said earlier, we'll talk about some of the Gmail and Microsoft changes in a minute as well, because some stuff going on there. But I think, yeah, you must find it so often with merchants that you work with. You've got to think of that other side of the conditional if statement of like, okay, these guys are not going to get anything here, and we probably shouldn't ignore them because they have bought from us maybe more than once. Like these are customers that should be buying products. We just need to give them that little nudge.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I actually helped somebody migrate recently, and they left they broke up with their agency. It
Mm.
wasn't yours, no.
No,
So
wouldn't have been ours. No, absolutely
and I was
not.
looking at their program, and it was so optimized for kind of that marketing, and you could tell that they got paid based on the campaigns that they deployed, because it was so many layers. And when you think back to, they felt the agency had lost their voice, they were going to take it back over, and they were going to manage their own email marketing. And we think, well, let's just focus on what's the most effective thing, because you bring up a really good point when you're managing 50 different versions. And the example I brought up earlier, where they have 27 different segments, they're really good at that. They are a well-run machine, tight team. They can do that. But for most folks, just draw a really simple line, and just say, hey, is this relevant for these contacts? If not, it doesn't need to be so far into the details, because your time and everything else that you need to be doing as a Shopify merchant, launching your Facebook ads, looking at your Google ads, trying to manage your inventory. Everything else is an opportunity that you've lost when you start getting into those 500 person audiences on a 200,000 person list. Just draw the simple line, and I always try to think about either the interest, or are they a prospect? Have they never purchased from me before? Okay, I need to explain my brand. Are they a customer, or are they a VIP? And if you just look at kind of those two kind of different ways to think of your customers, it's really going to simplify segmentation, and it's not going to make it this big thing that is too complex to get into. It's going to give you a really easy entry point, and that's where it's effective. Now, you mentioned the Google and the Microsoft. That's a big part of it too. Um, so that it's been keeping me busy. I'll just say that. So Google and Microsoft recently launched new guidelines for bulk senders. So anybody that's sending to more than 5,000 addresses for either of those services, they are going to start holding you accountable to the best practices that they've recommended for years. And for people that have followed those recommendations, they're not really seeing a big change. But for people that are kind of more on the marginal side, or they've got that monolithic view of their audience, and they're sending to 50,000, 75,000, 100,000, what we're finding out is that they are being placed in the junk folder a lot faster. And when you're in there, we've successfully pulled out every brand that has worked with us on this, but it takes work. It takes a little bit of time. We've recently helped somebody recover from a bad sender rating to a high sender reputation with Gmail, but it took 15 sends. And if you just put a couple of these best practices in place ahead of time, then you avoid the whole problem. You're right in there anyways. And I think one piece that it was a brand I was working with recently. Over the last 90 days, they had done something like $125,000 in conversion revenue, and they have 27,000 on their list. So they're doing really great for their list. They're in love with that 27,000 subscriber. They look at each one of those as potential revenue. But what we did when we actually looked at that list was we found that only 55% of that audience, that 27,000, those were the customers that accounted for all of that revenue. So you have 45% of your list that has returned no value to you. And they're like, well, those are my customers. Technically, they're not. They haven't ever purchased from
They
you.
were.
They
Yeah,
were.
we
They
went,
were your
also if they've
prospects.
never purchased. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you just failed to convert them the first time, or they've lapsed. And then, using those things to focus just on when somebody's a prospect or who your customer is, that's going to improve your engagement. That's going to improve your inbox placement. All of those mystical things that people are like, how can I hack into the inbox? Sorry, Gmail, when we're talking about AI, Gmail's really good at data analysis. They know if people want your emails or not. They're going to put it in the right spot. So if you haven't, looked at those new sender guidelines, you can find all sorts of content out there about it. But look into the new Gmail bulk sender practices is the big one. So
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And anyone that's on the newsletter as well, when you got an email about this, if Brian and I can find anything between recording this right now ahead of schedule, but yeah, if we find anything between this and then, we'll put it in the newsletter of the Winning with Shopify guys as well. So you can, if you're subscribed to our emails, you can get it from us, which also send from Seguno now as well, so you can see it in action. But I've got two questions on this, Brian, because obviously
yeah,
this has changed this year. Like this is a new 2024. development, which is quite exciting. So, first question is: you mentioned the sender rating. How can people check that, like with Gmail, Outlook, or whatever email platform they're using?
Yeah, absolutely. Sender rating is it's an important part, and we could do, it might be a dense hour, but we could do an hour on just deliverability practices another time. But um, sender rating simply, you can actually manage if you're sending from your authenticated domain. So you can go to postmaster.google.com. You can actually register your domain, and you can get direct feedback from Gmail. Gmail does famously, they are very strict on spam reported rates, but they don't share that back with email senders, which is kind of interesting. It's kind of a little bit of a black box, but they'll share it with you directly based on your domain. So you'll have to do a really simple DNS update. You just add a record, and then you'll actually see where your reputation ranked, how many people marked you as spam every bit along the way, and then you can kind of tell. For everyone else, you can, Microsoft has an option. Some others have different options, but you really can infer it based on domain performance. So when you see a open rate for a domain drop, when you're at 20%, you're right on the edge. When you hit 10%, all of a sudden you're going to notice that it sometimes drops to 2% and maybe up to 5. And what's happening there is your open rate is an indicator of where you're hitting the inbox and if you're getting put in the junk folder or not. So when you see those big drops in your open rates, you're seeing that actually my email overall is being placed somewhere different. I need to spend special attention on that one. We work with brands on all the time. And this is something that we think as just critical to email marketing. So we include all deliverability services for every customer. Um, it is not exactly a giant revenue producer. I will say it's got to be a loss leader in terms of time, but it's so impactful. To make sure that your emails you're sending get to the customers. So you can segment out those domains. You can look at, okay, for this domain, how many lapsed prospects do I have in there? How many lapsed customers do I have in there? Is it worth sending to them? Do I want to do a win back campaign? Do I want to just focus on the engaged ones? And repeatedly sending to the more engaged contacts sends a positive signal, and that lifts your reputation back up. So it's not super mystical. It just takes time and understanding the right attention to it. So it's something that we think is really important with 2024. Now, the other part of that is your automations. So your Shopify automations, those are sending really positive signals. Remember that we talked about those are getting 2 to 3x the engagement. Those are really positive signals. And when somebody sees your email, opens it, clicks it, that's sending a signal directly to Gmail that says, "Hey, when you get a email from Winning with Shopify, we got to put that into the inbox because people love this content." And so, great, we're gonna keep that going. We're gonna do that in aggregate overall.
Yeah, yeah. And instantly, when you said that, while you were talking, I've got on the next tab to where we're recording right now in Chrome. I've got the Winning with Shopify Seguno account open. I won't quote too many stats from it, obviously, because some of them are confidential to my team. But we do have a 28% click through rate on our first email we sent from a brand new domain as well, which I thought was pretty good. And our open rate is well over 50. So I feel like we're doing something right at the moment. But what you've just captured, I think, for merchants, and I've never in my 16, 17 years in this industry, I've never even thought about this. And I've just written a note in my pad saying, am I actually an idiot for not realizing this? What I find amazing is you've basically just said, like, if your open rate was, say, 30%, 70% of your email list, they're sitting there and you're not quite reaching them. And if you, as you say, it's not an overnight, it's also not super mystical. It just takes a bit of time and a bit of work. You can still reach that 70%, although the unengaged people, and actually get them re-engaged by getting through the spam filter with something that's relevant. And I was going to say, yeah, my second question was yeah. First one was, how do you check the rating, your sender rating? The second question was going to be, how do you get out of it? And you've already answered that. My third question, which you've already answered as well, is how does automation apply? Because automation feels like it's going to be a really nice, like close knit, which, as you say, it absolutely is. And certainly over the years, I was going to say personalization always wins. It doesn't always win. There are times when it doesn't, but I think generally speaking, you've got to get something that is relevant to the customer. But also, I think that sender rating to flip the whole thing on its head and ask almost like the opposite question. If customers are not opening the emails, they're not engaging, how long do you persist before that starts to come under threat? That rating that you should actually go, these guys just aren't receiving it. So I'm going to just let them chill for 6 months, 12 months, come back to them. Or I sell, I don't know, mattresses for beds. So actually, I'm going to wait 5 years before I try and re-engage them because that's when they're next going to need a mattress. Like, when do you decide to stop and just break off the relationship?
Yeah, I mean, it's you brought up a really good example with mattresses. I don't know about you. I love my mattress, it was not a simple buying experience, right? So, I'm pushing on all the mattresses. I'm asking my buddies, but the consideration window for your product plays a big part into how long you want to pursue that customer, and you know what you're spending on ads. So if you know what it costs you to acquire a customer, how long do you want to try to nurture them? You paid to get them to sign up. You paid to drive them to your site. I think it's really important that you nurture them for that full consideration window. So a lot of times we'll look at people who send a welcome email. And a welcome email too often is just a, hey, here's your discount code, and that's the end of it. But if they didn't convert from that, what they didn't, it wasn't the value of the discount code that failed to convert them. They're looking for something else. They might be looking for social proof. They want testimonials. They want risk minimization. So 100-night sleep trial. Return it, and if you don't love it, we're gonna make sure it's clean. We're gonna donate it. Your unique values. People are kind of dropping that off in the welcome. Or, okay, if they still didn't purchase it, they didn't have the product that they were looking for. So let's feature a collection of our best sellers. Okay, let's call those ones out. Let's talk about the breadth of our products. Let's talk about our manufacturing processes. All of those different things are really important to show them during the consideration window. The other automations, I think, are so critical because they often will tie into the purchase behavior. So one of the most overlooked reports inside Shopify is your customer cohort report. And it is probably my favorite, but it'll show you all first-time customers and then how many of those you've retained for each month afterwards. So you can literally see in a chart where you're losing all of your customers, and then you need to be re-engaging them right before they're falling off there. So customer win back, we call it lapsed purchaser inside Seguno, is really critical because when we're talking about how long do you keep them going, before you kind of let them go? Well, you want to get them before they fall off. In terms of, hey, they haven't engaged in 180 days, probably we're going to let them go at that point. We're looking at it, but really it's going to be different for each one, because if you have 50% of your folks engaging, then I don't necessarily need to let go of that one customer at that point. I might just put them off to the side. And then when Prime Day comes along, do you have Prime Day in the UK?
We do,
Uh,
yeah. I've been
uh,
getting notifications the last few weeks. Yeah, Prime Day's coming. It's like,
I
oh,
think
okay.
I think it's today, yesterday, and today. But when Prime Day comes up, or when your peak season comes up, that's a good time to try to reactivate some of those customers in smaller bits. But sending to the most engaged customers the other times, that's going to help build that reputation. I do want to say that you don't want to spike your volumes, and that's a really good thing about automations. They don't spike volumes. It's a steady cadence. It's a little bit kind of the grains of sand kind of pile up there for them. So there's a different thing. The best thing I would say is don't just make brash decisions. Think about your consideration window. Think if you're nurturing your customers
I'm
properly.
getting flashbacks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm just going to rip this whole thing out and get rid of all these people and all this potential revenue. Don't do that. Talk to your deliverability analyst. Do a little bit of reading up on it. But I think a lot of folks will optimize to email engagement, where they need to instead go back to kind of that first principle. The reason we're doing this marketing is to drive the order or the conversion. And so when you think about it in that way, you're then going to see, okay, I need to automate this message. I need to make sure that I'm sending on a regular basis to keep my general audience engaged, those types of practices.
Yeah, and for anyone who's like, "What the hell's Prime Day?" If you check in Google, you can work out exactly what day we recorded this. About a week and a half before we posted it. So,
Oh, geez. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so you've got just under a year until Prime Day. So stay excited, people. It's coming. But I love that you're talking about the consideration window, actually, and it's such a good way, I think, of talking about. And I'm going to kind of pivot this out of email, and we'll come back in a sec. But we have so many clients, and Google Ads is a really good with the tracking within Google Ads. So if you're not using GA4, you're using Google Ads direct tracking, which is their own script you put in your checkout. If you're using that, it's really good at calculating what we call the conversion lag, or lag time. It's always got the word lag in it. And what it is, it's the time between when they click on your Google ad and actually purchase. Sometimes it's minutes or hours, and that's probably where they click and buy in that first journey. But that lag time, for some of our clients, can literally be 3 to 8 weeks. And if we know that, if we know that, it means at the end of each month, we're not going, we've had really good ROI all year and it tanked this month. because this month will continue to increase. So it's currently July. So throughout August, a lot of our clients' accounts, their July revenue will keep increasing. Obviously, the spend won't, because we've spent the money in July. July's finished and spend is done, because that happens instantly. But the conversion value will continue to rise where people have come back and bought later. And it does what's called data attribution. Sorry, data-driven attribution. So it actually puts the revenue. So say they spent $100, it will actually put $20 or $30 back to that first click, maybe 5 or 10 in the middle, and then the rest of it on the last click. So back in the old days, we were all working on the last click, ignoring all of that, and PMax has actually come along and changed this. But as I think you've put really well, Brian, is when it comes to email, you've got this unique opportunity to actually have a conversation with the customer in the middle of that window.
Right.
So I think a lot of brands are very quick to just focus on the like, let's change the color of our add to cart button. And don't get me wrong, I recommend that to clients a lot, especially
100%.
if the wish list is brighter than the add to cart. Like, that is the wrong way around. The add to cart should always be prominent, but also, as you said earlier, Brian, think about like, how can we get them to subscribe to something? Like, we work with a beauty brand, and we've actually had them on the show about a year ago, I think it was. And those guys were saying that their first kind of conversion point was rarely a purchase. It was normally sign up here and you'll get an email every day for the next 7 days. And we'll talk you through a process where you can learn about skincare, you can learn about how to improve your complexion using products you probably already have in your bathroom. And what they do every day is they subtly say you can use do a face wash and you've got a moisturizer, but here's our product and why we think our product trumps them all. Like, it's better than all the rest of them for these reasons, because your skin needs this and nobody else has got that. We patented that ingredient or that item, or we're the ones that grow it, so we have a monopoly on all of it. So buy our product, it's really good. And I think it's really good actually just to go through a process like that as a customer, because as you said earlier as well about a welcome campaign, just having the discount. Imagine if you were educating them and then they're telling and the best thing with skin, anything to do with like skin, nails, hair, depending on what circles you're in, like, your friends notice. And that's a really powerful part of the buying journey for anyone, is going like, your skin looks great at the moment. What have you been doing? And as a man, I always say, I don't know. Whereas if you said to my wife, she'd say, oh, I'm using this at the moment. And she's always trying new things and changing things. I think it's really important to understand that about the customer. And then things like email, Google ads, you start to actually have more to bite into. There's more of a campaign there to really go after. But I want to kind of change gears slightly and talk about something you mentioned briefly there that I noticed in Seguno when we started using Seguno a few weeks ago for our Winning with Shopify newsletters, and that's the send rate. I literally clicked send on their newsletter just before we jumped on here. So you can go and have a look at it if you want, Brian, because I know you've got access to all the Seguno accounts. I clicked send on one of our newsletters just before we hit record. And I've noticed that it sends them in little chunks, doesn't it? And you just mentioned that about like, you don't want a spike of like, okay, we've emailed 300,000 people, nothing for a week, 300,000 people, nothing for a week. Instead, your tool will send it over like 2 or 3 days at times, won't it? So I think you've got to factor that in. If you don't really want to do that for a 24-hour flash sale. So you might just want to send the 24-hour flash sale to a certain type of customer, for example, and do it in a smaller chunk, or even if you could do multiple 24-hour sales to different segmentations at different times,
Yeah.
so that you don't get blocked.
Yeah, throttling and kind of that send rate. So the throttling would be the kind of the term that we'll use to take the total volume of email and spread it out over time. It can be kind of a different topic. There are pieces that we want to ways that we want to use throttling to improve performance with specific domains. The one that you're referring to is tied to when we're first starting with a new domain. Gmail says, hey, I haven't seen this domain come from this source before. That's suspicious. I want to be a little cautious of it. So what Gmail has actually told us to do is a very specific cadence of we start with certain customers and send them a small batch. A couple hours later, send another batch and another batch and another batch. And that's kind of what we call domain warming. I'll be really honest. When I used to do enterprise onboarding at another company, now defunct company for email marketing, I would spend 6 or 8 hours just organizing the domain warming send because it was so critical to them. And we've basically automated that for everybody. So I would have to pull in all this different data like we're talking about. So, being built inside Shopify means that we actually get to look at all of your engagement data, who's a new customer, who's an older customer, organize all that for you, and then optimize it for performance. But that first kind of throttled introduction is so critical to that sender reputation. If you just all of a sudden spike 20,000 more emails, Gmail actually does send us a notification that says, hey, we've detected an unusual high amount of email from this particular domain. We're going to hold off on these, and they'll delay your emails. And then if you get too many delayed, they'll actually say, you know what, your reputation has dropped. We're now going to reject these emails. So it's really important to take those and introduce them slowly over time. It's something that almost everybody overlooks, but it's a really important part of making sure that you've migrated correctly. It's also, Nick, we were talking about all the things coming into peak season. We're talking about Prime Day and all these huge times where you're getting back into the black with Black Friday and classically all those things. Now is the time to get these things in order. Do not put it off until like, hey, it's a couple days before Thanksgiving. You know what I need to do? I need to re-engage these 50,000 old email addresses that haven't purchased with me. That's a horrible idea. You just lost all your good customers because you sent all your people who aren't your customers. Now's the time to start looking into your sending reputation. Start looking at your automations, thinking about your consideration window, thinking about if your discounts improve your average order volume or if they cheapen your product. How are people perceiving that? Do you have the social proof in your welcome series so that rather than me tell you what the unique ingredients are, have your customer say that this skincare ingredient makes my skin just glow. Or that I've gotten more compliments since I started using this regimen than any time before in my life. Those words are going to convert the most. Starting to look at your abandoned checkout, your abandoned cart. Now's the time to start getting your ducks in a row so that you're not panicking. It's like cramming for an exam in college, or I think you guys call it uni over there. But you don't want to just wait until that. Oh, it's Sunday night and that's tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. Start studying up, start getting these pieces in place now. So work with your providers, check out different tips. One of my favorite is you actually did a webinar a couple of weeks ago, I think, for CRO tips. I always find it so fun to listen to CRO tips and see how people stop at the website with CRO. They're like, oh, CRO for ads to landing pages, great.
Guilty.
Keep it going as
Yeah.
it goes the whole way through.
Yeah.
Your
You're right.
button colors do matter. Make it continuous all the way from the ads through. Button colors do not matter more than just getting the right message to the right person. So start with the most important pieces and go from there. So.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's amazing, and something we've not actually said at all yet, but I'm hoping to have this ready by the end of August. And Seguno are going to be involved. I haven't emailed them yet, but they are going to be involved in this. And we are creating. You mentioned Peak. We are creating a Peak playbook for this year. We always do webinars on it. We do loads of podcast episodes on it. So we're bringing in all the best resources we've had over the last 3 or 4 years into a single PDF. So keep an eye out for that, guys. We are also, as well, while we're on the topic of announcing big things that are coming up, and again, Seguno, Inventory Planner, and also Affluencer, who we had on last week, 3 of our partners at the moment, they're all going to be involved in this as well. We are going to be running some sort of growth competition at the end of the year. So it'll be like the fastest growing, best growing, most green growing. We're going to be running some sort of competition at the end of the year as well. And there will be some sort of award given out in January. So keep an eye out for that as well, guys. As I said a month or so ago, we're doing so much more than just pumping out podcast episodes now. And separately running my agency. I love what you just said about Pete, Brian. Like, I'd never thought about actually how many people go like, oh, these people bought from us in peak. They kind of tailed off January, February. Let's wait. And peak comes around again and bang, let's hit all of them. We've been doing so much actually, and it's July at the time of recording this. We've done so much between January and now already for Christmas, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, for almost all of our clients on their PPC SEO campaigns. We've already got everything mapped out, from when shoots are going to happen to when content's going to be available, to even in things like SEO as well. If you suddenly name a page like Black Friday and then you email all these customers that have never heard of you, you've screwed up your email campaigns, and you're not going to rank on SEO because you're only there for a week or just the cyber weekend or even a month. That's a short window to try and rank a load of content for SEO and then disappear. A lot of our clients, it's July, we are already building backlinks. There's content live, and we've already got the pages live, and the pages are just going to suddenly evolve on Black Friday. Two of our biggest clients, for example, they've been number one for their Black Friday keywords for 3 years solid. Like, whether it's Black Friday or not, already, thank you, already number one. And that was an idea I had one day in a meeting with one of our biggest. In fact, it was with TJ Maxx was the brand. TK Maxx, we call them in the UK. Was sitting in a meeting with those guys a few years ago, and I suddenly had this moment of going, "Hang on, we could rank for this all year." And then there's no like race to do stuff. So yeah, we're already starting to leak out Black Friday stuff, and people are already subscribing to newsletters, waiting for Black Friday deals and information. And quite a few of our clients are not doing discounts this year; they're doing exclusives. So past customers only. So actually saying if you want to get access to our Black Friday range, and it's going to be a Black Friday range just for a weekend, and then they're gone. There's going to be a low stock count, all of them are limited edition. You want to get access, you have to have spent $400 so far in this calendar year, or you will not get access to it. So actually using it is quite a cool drive already, and there's no discounting whatsoever. Premium brand, premium desire. And so I think, yeah, thank you, Brian. You've mentioned so many good points just in that answer that, and I think peak's going to be massive this year. It's obviously big every year. But going back to what we're talking about today in terms of both automation and 2024, just in the last few minutes we got, what are some of the things people should focus on this year, assuming they did everything perfectly last year? What's changing beyond what we've spoken about with the with Gmail, Microsoft changing the way they're working with email sending? What other stuff do people need to be aware of coming into peak this year?
Yeah. So, well, specifically for your Shopify automations, I think there are a couple of kind of key automations I want everyone to really be aware of. Um, so your purchase behavior triggers are more important now than ever. We're seeing customers are more conscious with their dollars. That's just kind of people aren't spending the way they were a couple of years ago. So you want to be look at your timing. Think about when somebody get distracted because I've got a 2-year-old pulling on my shirt tail. Am I on my way to work? How long am I coming back? Looking at some of those metrics that you already had, you called that a really great one with the lag time to purchase. Thinking about those and then really trying to focus in on those consideration windows. One that I think has been overlooked for a lot of folks is tied to back in stock. Back in stock actually is a really incredibly effective program, and we have folks that actually have tested if they would rather do back in stock or pre-order, to let people know. Now they went with pre-order because it helps with kind of capital coming in over time, and then you just ship it out when it comes in. But back in stock actually converts 10x over abandoned checkout. Abandoned checkout was the previous best automation that we saw, and I've seen this. When the first time I saw it, I was like, "This is incredible. This is an anomaly." And then I'm like, "Oh, let's check again." Oh my gosh, another one, another one, another one. When people say back in stock, they're telling you they will buy this product. Make sure you've got your back in stock automation set up, working with your inventory. I think those pieces are really important. One thing that I really want to call out this year more than ever is in the past people were very guarded about the customer experience, and to the point where they were turning away customers. It was like your example of if you own a brick and mortar shop and somebody walks in, you don't want to annoy them, so you don't even greet them. You don't even smile at them. Oh, I'm gonna hide behind the counter so that they can just browse about. They don't need to know what my best products are. They don't need to
That
know
would
how
make me
many people
laugh.
like me. They're going to turn around and walk right back out. So don't be afraid of putting a thoughtful series in place, a longer series. You don't need to pepper them every 6 hours. That's going to cause other issues. Of course, you're going to see a higher churn rate there. You're going to see lower deliverability and engagement. But don't be afraid to say, "Hey, I sent an abandoned checkout email." Okay, that's one. But let's think about that lag time, that consideration window, the 2-year-old pulling on your shirt tail. Let's say, okay, all right, I need to do an immediate one. I need to do a reminder. And then kind of a week later, hey, anything else on your mind? An invitation to connect with me. Why didn't you purchase? Trying to get that feedback. That's one that I think has been really effective for a lot of folks. We have a luxury brand. They do luxury pet products. And one of the things that he was always most proud of was his reply rate. He said, I get emails from customers all the time. And for so many other brands, they're like, I don't want to have to deal with all this. But when you hear from your customers, you get the most insight. You're able to help sell them, adjust your messaging. So I think a lot of people are afraid of over contacting, afraid of getting that
Yeah.
feedback. Don't be
It's
afraid
right
of
to
that.
be slightly cautious, but yeah, you can be overcautious with that for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, they are. I think the one that gets me the most was somebody that was spending a couple $1,000s a week on Facebook ads, and they wouldn't do a pop up on their page. I said, okay, that's fine. What's your conversion rate? And they're like, well, it's decent. I'm like, okay, what's the flip side of that? Those are all people that you paid traffic to acquire, and they didn't purchase. And he's like, oh my god, they just unlocked. It's because they didn't see what was important to you. So don't be afraid to kind of sell your brand through email. People said they want to hear from you. Don't be afraid to tell them what they want to hear. So
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I really appreciate it, Brian. I think we'll bring stuff into land in a sec, but I think there's so much in there to digest that I could do another hour. On which note, anyone listening thinking like, okay, Peak's a big thing. You're making me panic now. We're going to have Brian or someone else from the Seguno team on long before peak, probably sort of towards the end of August, early September, like we did last year as well. We had yourself on talking about exactly that. So we'll definitely get you back. But yeah, so much to cover today. And I think we've done a pretty good job. I've written an entire page of notes. So yeah, I want to say, Brian, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you on. If people want to reach out to you and Seguno, what's the best way to get in touch or even have a play with the software?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely head over to seguno.com. That's Seguno, Seguno, not
Spelled like
Seguno.
this on
There
my
you go, on
t-shirt.
the screen. Perfect. You can email me directly, Brian at Seguno.com. I do my best to respond to as many emails as I can, a timely manner.
It's pretty quick on email, guys. So
Yeah,
challenge accepted. Like send them an email and see how long it takes. Yeah.
I try to be as quick as I can, even with the UK and US time difference. So the other thing is, we'd love to show you around the platform. You can go and book a demo with somebody from the team. We're happy to learn about your email platform, your program, what your pain points are, how we can help them. That's I think a really big thing. We do offer a free trial for anyone. So if you want to click in and kind of click around, take a look, I would appreciate that. I think there's nothing like using software for me. Sales folks will tell you the software can do a million things in a row. We don't do that here, but understanding how it enhances your Shopify data, I think, is a really cool thing. So love to hear from you guys. Definitely pop over to seguno.com or shoot me an email, seguno at Brian at seguno.com. So that's
Amazing.
Brian with an I.
Cool. Brian, it was good to say because some people do spell it with a Y, don't they? But yeah, Brian, great to have you on the show. And as I say, Seguno, they're going to be hanging around for the next year with us now, which is really exciting. Same with Inventory Planner and also Affluencer as well. So thanks so much to Brian. Thanks to everybody listening at home. If you haven't already, hit subscribe. Back again next Friday. And thanks for tuning in today.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Take care.